Alrighty, thank you all so much for joining again. My name is Nathaniel Donkomore. She is Anisha. She works with the Center for Diversity. I'm just here to help and bring ideas. And part of what the Engineering Center Career Center wanted to do is just prepare you all not just for post graduation, but make sure you all have every resources necessary to succeed. So this is one of three programs event that we have planned. And for today's event, which is personal finance, we have our wonderful professor and guest speaker, Professor Dorothy Kelly. She is a CFA. CFA is that she's the Robert B. Hardaway Junior Lecturer in Personal Finance, and she teaches COM 2730 and a personal finance course for non-COM students at UVA. She is passionate about promoting financial well-being among students and alumni. And on behalf of everyone, we are super excited to have you, Professor Kelly, and learn from your experiences. So over to you, Professor Kelly.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Anisha. It's wonderful to be here. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to meet you, sort of. And thanks for coming in out of the beautiful weather to participate. Possibly some of you are watching from the lawn. That would be great too. Jessica, okay, you're just clapping. Thank you, Jessica. I love a small interactive group. I'm not a big fan on lecturing. So if you have a question, feel free to pipe up and ask that question. Nate just asked a question and I might defer and say, okay, that's a good question, but let's hold off on that question until we get to a little farther in, because then it'll make more sense. Okay, so, but go ahead and ask when the mood strikes you, when something comes up, because it might be a great time for that question. So today we're going to basically have a crash course in personal finance to help you make learn about making smart financial decisions. As Nate says, I teach COM 2730. It's a 3-credit elective with no prerequisites. And it's for non-COM students. I get a fair number of engineering students in my class. They're wonderful students. We have a lot of fun together. And we will be back in the classroom at 8 a.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays starting in the fall. So if you're third year, think about if you want to join and learn a little bit more. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to try and squish three credits into 60 minutes, which is not very easy. Okay. As you all know, you're engineers, you know that's not right. That's not really possible. So it's going to look it might feel a little bit like this. Right? So, all right, and away we go. My focus when I teach is on financial well-being, all right? Some people talk about financial literacy. I don't like that term, okay? And people are like, why? And I'm like, well, because I want everybody to embrace this subject and nobody admit or feel like they're illiterate. But most people are perfectly willing to, are encouraged to pursue well-being and wellness, and they know it's a constant journey. So I focus on financial well-being. And what does that mean? There's 4 components of financial well-being, okay? The first 2 have to do with security. Do you have control over your month-to-month, day-to-day and month-to-month finances? Some people do, some people don't. Last January, most Americans did. We had great employment records. People had jobs. People were paying the bills. Everything worried last January. Problem is, the second part of financial well-being is, do you have the capacity to absorb a financial shock? And unfortunately, many Americans do not. And that became painfully clear in March, when many people were forced to stay home from their jobs, whether or not they wanted to. Okay? Furloughs, shutdowns, or health concerns, lots of people suddenly could not work all at the same time. Usually when we talk about the capacity to absorb a financial shock, it's like, well, the car needed work, you needed new tires, you got in an accident, a tree fell on the roof, somebody got sick in the family. It's usually very personal and individual. Last March, it became very clear, oh, the capacity to absorb a financial shock can actually can affect a lot of people all at once. And that's sad, right? Okay, so number one, get control of your day-to-day and month-to-month finances. And number two, you need to develop the capacity to absorb a financial shock. Have a financial cushion in case a tree falls on the roof, your car breaks down, you get laid off, you get sick and have to take time off from work, those kinds of things, okay? You have those two things, that's great, you're on the way. You're on the road to financial well-being. The next one is, are you on track to meet your financial goals? We all have financial goals. Most of us have multiple financial goals, and they may have varying time horizons. So is anyone willing to share a financial goal that they have? I can give you an example that a lot of students do. A lot of students want to, for instance, they want to take a junior year abroad or a semester abroad, or they want to, not as much in the engineering school, but some students want to take an unpaid internship. Some people want to go to graduate school. Some people want to take a trip after graduation. So some of them are short term, and then some of them might be longer term. Somebody might want to buy a house. They have to buy a car. They're thinking about children, educating children, and their old age. All right. These are all financial goals with varying time horizons. So the question is, you develop a plan and you get on track. Are you on track? And if you have number 1, 2, and 3, you're like doing great, right? And I shared this slide with a colleague of mine a few years ago, and I showed him that and then we got to 4, and he says, okay, financial freedom to make choices that allow you to enjoy life. He said, so if you have 1, 2, 3, then you have 4. And I thought, I just really thought about it. And I thought he had number 4 because he had 1, 2, and 3, and he had a very safe and secure job that he loved. But I went to bed, I went home thinking about him all night. I thought about him, and I woke up the next morning and I realized, no, some people have 1, 2, and 3, but they do not have number 4. Okay. They may have a very high paying, high powered job, and they may be burnt out, and would like to make a change, but they are unable to make that change. They don't have the financial freedom to make a change, because if they did, they would lose control over their day-to-day finances. They would go through the capacity to absorb a financial shock, and they would stop being on track to meet their financial goals. Who are those people? I'm thinking about people who have, multiple kids that they're still trying to educate. Maybe they have elderly parents they're taking care of. They have a spouse who's dependent on them. They have 5 people dependent on them and their very high salary. If you love your job and it's secure, that's okay. If you don't love your job or it's insecure, that can be stressful, and that can take away that financial freedom that I want for all of you. Okay, I want everyone to have that financial freedom. Okay, all right. So who needs financial health and well-being? We all do. I told you about many Americans. It became clear they didn't have enough money to absorb a financial shock. There's been research that says many Americans can't come up with $4 for an emergency without going into debt or borrowing. Going into debt or selling something they own. That's not a good position to be in. You want to be in the green zone. You want to have 3 to 9 months of living expenses as your capacity to absorb a financial shock. And I say that is for that should be your goal when you graduate, to make sure you accumulate 3 to 9 months of savings to absorb a financial shock. And as you age, that number gets larger. Okay, you need to, because when you're young and you're 20, if you have to switch jobs, it shouldn't take you more than 9 months to find a new equivalent job. But the older you get, the harder it is. And in fact, it may be impossible to get the exact same job or as good a paying job in the future. In fact, some people are having that trouble with the pandemic. I read an article about women who had to step back during the pandemic, or they were furloughed and now they got a new job and it's paying like half of what they were making. So the capacity to absorb a financial shock, that emergency fund, starts out with 3 to 9 months when you're in your 20s, but as you get older, so it's going to be 12 to 24 months. And then it's, when you're my age, it might be 12 to 36 months. Okay. So keep that in mind. It provides enormous flexibility for you. So who needs it? Everybody needs financial well-being. Why should we care about it? Well, because it impacts all of us. It impacts our entire well-being. Okay. If you're stressed out about money, it's going to affect your physical health, your emotional and psychological health. It's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect your productivity at work. So having financial well-being helps provide strength and gives you freedom to be the best you can be. In other words, it's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It helps you build, satisfy the needs you need to become, to reach your full potential and become the best you can be. All right. So we're talking about safety right here. Okay. Security. That's what financial well-being is. It's security. And if you have security, then you don't worry and you can put more of your cognitive energy into relationships, into work, into creativity, right? So how are you going to do it? You're going to plan, okay? You're all engineers. You know the importance of planning. You don't just wing it. You actually make a plan, okay? And even if you were an engineer, so fortune favors the prepared. For some people, competitive athletes, they understand the importance of training, developing a plan, getting ready, and for a big competition or for a season. Okay, but for other people, I'm not a competitive athlete, never was much of an athlete. I love to travel though, so I look at financial well-being as an adventure, as a traveling adventure. Okay, so you need to be prepared and plan accordingly. The first step you want to do is identify those goals, right? So what are they? Do you have your emergency fund? Do you want to take a vacation? Do you need to buy a car? Thinking about grad school or educating your future children? Maybe buying a home, and definitely developing a nest egg. Okay. What is a nest egg? A nest egg, I was just reading about this today. I was like, where did that term come from? So farmers will put an egg in a hen's nest to encourage the hen to lay more eggs, thereby increasing his or her income. All right. So in other words, you put one thing in and you get more out. So that's what you want to do with investing. You put money in to get more of a return. All right. So the financial planning process means you start with your current financial situation. Where am I? Where am I? And your financial goals are, where do I want to be? So then you can start your plan, identify different courses of actions, evaluate the alternatives, and then you're going to create and implement your plan, review and revise it as necessary. It's just a situation, a repetitive process. You keep growing and building on this. Okay. So what is your current financial situation? I'm going to suggest to you that you are all much wealthier than you realize. Who here feels like a struggling student or identifies with the concept of a poor struggling student? I was a poor struggling college student when I was in school. Okay. I was a liberal arts undergrad, not a STEM student. And I put myself through college with student loans, work study, grants, etc. Okay, and savings from babysitting and everything else. So I put myself through college. I graduated with the equivalent of $30,000 in student loans. Okay, so this graph here shows you, talks about your total economic wealth, which is a combination of your human capital and your financial capital. All right, your human capital is your ability to earn and save money. Okay, as a young person, you have a long future ahead of you in which you can earn and save money. Of course, as you age, that the time horizon decreases, so your diminishes with time. Okay, your financial capital is your total saved assets. So when I was your age, I was getting ready to graduate, or even before I graduated, my financial capital was not at zero like this graph has. This is just illustrative. Many students graduate and their financial capital is zero. Mine was negative 30, right? Negative $30,000. So why do I tell you that? I want students who have loans to understand it's not, it should not derail you. Okay, you made an investment in your education and it's going to be fine. You're going to pay it off and you're going to build your financial capital. So because your human capital declines over time, the goal is to build your financial capital to offset that diminishing human capital, right? And the combination of the two, remember, is your total economic wealth. This is an illustrative graph. It's not data driven, right? So can anybody think of someone or a type of career where the graph is very, very different? And for instance, it slopes down drastically from age 30 down to, starts decelerating at a rapid pace at age 30.
Maybe sports.
Who said that? Yes, Nate. Professional athletes. Many professional athletes, their peak earning years are age 22, 25, right? And by the time they're 30, if they are still playing in their sport, they have very short careers, some of them, right? So if you know that, or knowing that, what can you do? One is you can really work hard to build up that financial capital because you're going to need earlier. And two is you can keep building your skills, develop new skills to continue so that you can push out the graph as much as possible. Okay. So this shows you your total economic wealth. It does not reflect your value as a human being. It's just economic wealth. Okay. Any questions on that? It's really important to me that you remember think about your human capital as well as your financial capital. It's the total picture. Okay. All right. So, all right. Now, life is full of risks. Think of those professional athletes. They get in an accident, they can't play. They get injured on the field, can't play. These are problems, right? Pandemics. Who called that risk? Not too many people saw the pandemic coming 6 months before. Okay. So because life's full of risks, you have to think about how to protect, enhance, build, and maintain your assets. Those assets are your human capital, okay, your skills, your health, okay, and your overall ability to work and earn and save money, okay? So one easy way to protect your assets is with insurance, all right? You need insurance for your vehicle, right? You also need insurance for your stuff. So you should get renter's insurance. Okay, if you don't have renter's insurance, I encourage you to look into it. It's very cheap. It's like $100 a year or something like, and it will protect your stuff in case it's stolen, in case there's a fire, in case your neighbor or the person above you leaves the shower on or the tub running and floods your apartment. Okay. If you want to buy replacement value insurance so that it will replace your stuff. And also you want to make sure that it will cover, it will provide payment to you in case your apartment or your abode becomes uninhabitable and you have to move someplace else, right? So if, you know, the neighbor starts a fire and your house, your place becomes uninhabitable or it's flooded, you need to go somewhere, you're still stuck in a lease, right? And now you would have to shell out money. If you have renter's insurance and it covers that kind of a situation, then you won't be out much money, okay? So renter's insurance, very important. Homeowners, of course, if you buy a home, the same thing. Personal liability or umbrella insurance. The wealthier you become, the more important this is, okay? But if something happens, if someone comes to visit you and they get hurt, sometimes your renter's insurance will pay for a certain amount of medical expenses for someone who gets hurt on your property. But if their medical bills are more than that, or if they think you were negligent, they may sue you. Personal liability insurance will cover that for you, okay? So when you're wealthy, more people are more inclined to sue you. So that's one of the reasons why, as you build wealth, if you don't have personal liability insurance, consider it. And if you start building significant wealth, or as you feel like you become a target, you think, oh, I better check and see how much personal liability insurance I have and think about whether or not I need more. Because paying out a really large check is, you don't want to, it could totally derail your, okay? The next one, disability insurance. There's two types, short-term and long-term. Many of you have job offers. Congratulations. Many large employers offer disability insurance as part of their benefits package. Short-term, it may kick in, after 5 days and cover up to 12 weeks. Long-term insurance will usually kicks in if you've been ill for more than 12 weeks and may cover up to a year, or depending on the policy, it could cover longer, okay? So disability insurance can be a really good investment. Depends though, okay? So you're like I said, many employers offer the short term, which is great. One of the things you have to recognize with disability insurance, it may only cover 60% of your income. So, you get hurt and you can't work and you get disability insurance, which is great. But if it's only covering 60% of your income, how are you going to live on that? Are you going to be able to live on that? And remember, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's going to be really hard to do. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're budgeting, all right? And keep that in mind if something, remember the emergency fund, like if something happened and I had to go on disability, how much of that emergency fund would I blow through? You also might want to consider at some point in your life, term life insurance, right? It's many employers will offer this as part of their benefits package as well. That it's usually like 2 times salary. Okay, so they pay for it, so it's great. Term life insurance is very, very cheap. The life insurance industry will try and sell you cash value or universal life or whole life insurance. Say no, thank you, and just buy the term life insurance. Okay, the other one's too expensive, and you don't get this enough value for your money. And the last one, of course, is health insurance, which is another benefit that most employers will offer you. We're going to talk more about health insurance farther on. So those are the things you need to think about to protect your assets, okay? All right, what about enhancing, building, and maintaining all your other assets, right? Let me ask you, what are the 2 things that doctors and health experts say are the most important keys to achieving health and good health and well-being? If you want to be healthy, what do they say?
Exercise?
Yeah, exercise. Yep, that's one. What's the other one?
Eat well.
Yeah, diet, right? It's diet and exercise, right? It's really simple. That's what they say. And for your financial health, it's the same thing. Diet is your budget, and exercise are the activities and actions you take with your money. All right. And what do doctors and health experts say? When's the best time to get healthy? When should you start working on your diet and your exercise?
When you're still young.
Yeah, when you're still young, right? What if I'm not, you're still young, Nate. What do I do?
You can still start from whenever you can.
The best time to start is now, right? So you got to start now. So you all, remember, you all have really high human capital, right? You are at a huge advantage. Starting young makes an enormous, has an enormous benefit. Okay, so imagine, so you've got you're 21 years old and you figure out you can save $4,000 a year in an IRA, okay? And you do that for the next 10 years, okay? And maybe, in 10 years, you decide, I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna go study something, and you can't put the money in anymore, but you've invested it, and you've invested it in the stock market, in a diversified equity mutual fund, in an IRA, and you go away. You've made so before, when you re-enroll in school, you will have invested $40,000, and it will have grown to almost $70,000. Okay, give or take, right? So what happens if you come back at age 65 and look at that $40,000 investment? If it keeps growing at 10% return, it will reach almost $2 million in value. Okay, now that $2 million when you're age 65 is not the same as $2 million when you're age 21, right? Because we have this thing called inflation, and inflation erodes your purchasing power. It eats away at the value. So inflation is at about 2%, right? And that means that in about 36 years, $1 million today would be $2 million in 36 years. Okay, so, and this is 45 years from now. So it's not going to be worth nearly as much as we would like, but it's still worth a lot more than that $40,000 that you put in, right? Okay, so what happens if you, a lot of people don't have the discipline. Maybe, so some people say, well, I'm going to grad school now, not later, or I need to pay off my student loans before I can do that, or what I want to buy a house, et cetera, et cetera. So some people say, I'll do that later, and they decide I'll start when I'm 30. So if you do this at age 31, if you do the exact same thing, and then you take, you do it for 10 years, and you come back at age 65, your $40,000 investment will have only grown to a little bit more, somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000. Okay, huge amount of compounding comes in the last 10 years, not the first 10 years. It's the last 10 years. And what happens when you get to 30? I'll just let you know. Preview. Lots of people get married and they have kids and they're like, oh, I can't afford to save for my future now. I've got kids, I've got, babysitters, I've got childcare. We need to buy a bigger house because we're busting at the seams here, yada, yada, yada. So a lot of people say, I'll do it later. And maybe they get to age 40 and then they say, oh, I'll start now. Well, if they start at age 40, that $40,000 investment's only going to grow to less than $300,000. To catch up with the person who started at 21, you have to save somewhere around $20,000 a year from age 40 to 65. And guess what? Between age 40 and 65, that's when your kids are going to college. And you need that $20,000 for tuition as opposed to other things. So that $4,000 when you're young, is a really great investment, okay? think of it as an investment in your future, right? So wait, wait a minute, how is this possible? It's all about compounding. It's all about opportunity cost, okay? Opportunity cost is the cost of making one decision over another. And when you decide to invest in my future, I'm not going to consume everything I'm earning now. I'm going to save some of it. I'm going to create a nest egg. I'm going to use a nest egg to generate more income for my future. Then you're going to be in better shape. You're going to be able to achieve and enjoy financial well-being. Okay. So opportunity cost can also include the loss of time, energy, utility, and pleasure. So yeah, you're going to have to give some things up. We all do. So, but you have to decide what's worth more. Financial freedom or eating out. Okay. Every decision or choice carries a cost. And all I want from you is to choose wisely. Be thoughtful about your decisions. Okay. And of course, by now you're thinking, wait a second, where can I get 10% returns? Because you probably know you can't get that at the bank, right? So you're going to have to invest your money, all right? You're going to have to invest for your future. And the basic rule of investing is the higher the risk, the higher the potential return. Or conversely, the lower the risk, the lower return you will get. So if you put your money in a savings account or a money market account or in treasury bills, you are going to take very little risk. Okay, you don't have to worry, you're not going to lose money, but you're going to get very little return. And what you will lose is purchasing power. Remember what I said about inflation? Those really safe investments have a very hard time keeping up with inflation. Okay. So what you're going to do, I want you to think about the Goldilocks, embrace Goldilocks, okay? There are the very low risk investments that are going to give you almost no returns. Those are good places for your emergency fund because it's for an emergency and it'll be there, right? There are very aggressive and risky investments like options and futures, collectibles like Bitcoin or NFTs. I'm sure some of you have heard of those, non-fungible tokens. Those are risky, okay? I don't recommend those. I recommend the lovely Goldilocks in the middle. You wanted especially equity mutual funds and large and small cap stocks, okay?
Oh, this is Frances. A quick, we do have a question. So Nader and Anisha, do you want to ask the question that's in the chat?
Yes, I got it. So the question is, how would you recommend investing for short-term financial goals that aren't retirement, assuming you already have for IRA and 401k and stuff?
Okay, so short-term financial goals. So short-term would be 1 year or less, okay? And it's, if you need money in less than a year, it should be in the really place. It's not really investing, it's saving, okay? It's going to go in your money market fund or your bond or a CD, okay? And unfortunately, right now we're living in a very low interest rate environment. It's just the way it is. If you cannot predict, no one can really predict the stock market, okay? So it's really best for investments for goals of 3+ years, okay? If you need money between now and 3 years, you have to be very conservative. And you really need it. Like you have to be conservative because the stock market could go down and it could stay down for 2 or 3 years or longer. Okay. And it could drop a lot. So if you really need the money before then, you're just going to have to look for these other options. Okay. If you are, so I say creative and flexible. Say you say, well, I'd like to buy a house in 5 years, but if I don't have the money in 5 years, I could delay it a couple of years. Then, maybe, equities are an okay place to do that. I'm sorry, you know, it's very hard to give that kind of advice, okay? For short-term financial advice that's really tricky, okay? And I would caution you to say, like, anybody who's willing to give you short-term financial advice, you should question it. Like, people who really know that that's a tricky question, and people who try and tell you what to do, they might have a reason to tell you something, okay? They might have some bias in there, right? Okay. Oh, most apartment complexes require renter's insurance. Good to know. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to read these. Okay, all right. Are we good on the questions? And we understand risk and return? Okay, so a little bit, so always help, you know, facts and data and a little history, right? So remember we talked about inflation. Does anybody remember when you studied the Great Depression and they showed the photos with people selling apples for 5 cents, right? And yeah, so the other day I went to the grocery store and I was buying different flavors of different varieties of apples that I'd never seen before. And I didn't want to buy a lot that I didn't know how they tasted. So I bought one of different varieties. So one apple cost me $1. So 5 cents in 1929, $1 in 2021, right? That's inflation. So here shows you, this is only to 2017, but $1 in 1926 was equivalent to $14 in 2016, okay? If you invested it, if you bought, you know, you were very conservative and you put your money in treasury bills, your money, your $1 grew to $22. So it beat inflation. Yay! You didn't beat it by much. Okay. If you put it in long-term government bonds, it grew to $3, your $1 investment. That's better than inflation, right? But if you put it in large cap stocks like Apple, okay, I'm saying large cap means it's a really large company with a lot of shares. It's worth a lot of money. So Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, GE, those big companies you've all heard of. If you put it in large cap stocks, it grew to $7,338. Okay. If you put it in small cap stocks, so think of Netflix before it became a large cap stock, it grew to $36,000, almost $37,000. Okay. Now you can see that if you put it in treasury bills, it's a nice smooth curve, right? If you put it in government bonds, it was a little, you know, not quite as smooth, but mostly up, right? If you put it in equities, there was some it went up at the beginning, it went down a lot, it went up again, it went down. There's a lot more volatility in stocks, but the long-term trend is up, which is why I was saying for short-term goals, investing's probably not the right approach. You want to save for short-term goals and protect and maintain that purchasing power, as opposed to, you know, it's just hard because you don't know how long, look at how long it took for that to recover from that decline in the 20s. It took a long time. But you can see small cap stocks are much more volatile. So they're riskier, but they have a higher reward because of that risk. Okay. Now there's another thing you have to think about. Taxes matter. Okay. So remember I said the treasury bills and the bonds, well, you beat inflation. Well, not after you take out taxes. Okay. Bond over this period of time had an average, a nominal return of 5.7%. When you take out the taxes and inflation, the return was 0.6%. So you are to achieve your financial goals, bonds are not going to make it easy. Okay, it's going to be really difficult. Let's put it that way with using bonds. Okay, if you use stocks, taxes, and inflation, you're going to have 5% what we call 5% real rate of return, and that's going to make it easier to achieve your financial goals. Okay, questions? All right. Okay, so let's talk about tips, tools, and takeaways. So I want you to all get where you want to be and achieve those financial goals. I really want you all to achieve financial and enjoy financial well-being. Some of us engineers are more straight line people in my experience. I have some wonderful friends and loved ones who are engineers. They're very straight line. I was liberal arts. Someone talking? I was liberal arts. I didn't know what I was doing at graduation. My route's a little more squiggly, okay? My journey in life. But when it comes to finances, I'm pretty no, I'm a little bit more disciplined. Yes, Francis? Okay, so tip number 1, when you're budgeting, use the 20, 30, 50 rule of take-home pay. 20% of your take-home pay should go towards your financial priorities. Okay, those financial goals that we talked about. So they could be building your emergency fund. It could be paying off debt, or it could be building your nest egg. Okay, or any one of those financial goals that we talked about. Minimum of 20% investment in you and your future. Okay. Then after that, no more than 50% on your essentials: housing, transportation, utilities, groceries, insurance. Okay. Those are the things you have to pay for. You need to protect yourself and thrive. And then whatever you have left, you can put towards lifestyle choices: eating out, traveling, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Most young people, most Americans and most young people, actually, so people in the early 20s, they spend more than 50% of their take-home pay on 2 things: housing and transportation. Okay. Which leaves very little flexibility for everything else. So I really want to encourage you to try to think of ways to reduce your housing and transportation costs, so that you have, when you're young, so that you have flexibility for these other things, and that you can really you need to put that 20% in. Okay. You do not need to live. You've been living like students. Don't upscale your life yet. Okay, gradually. Okay. All right. Tip number 2, make smarter choices by employing a decision-making model. Think about, remember we said diet and exercise, budget, and everyday activities with your money. Think about what you're doing with your money. Identify the decision, gather information, identify alternatives, weigh the evidence, choose an option, take action, and review the outcomes. Was it a good decision or not? Should I live, is this a good way to spend my money or not? Is this and I encourage people to not use the "can I afford this?" The answer is usually yes, you can afford it, but the question is, will it get you closer to your financial goals? Will it help you achieve financial well-being or not? Or will it put you farther behind? So think about it. How should I live if I want to reach my financial goals and achieve financial well-being? Where should I work? Where should I live? How should I commute? What's the best choice? Which option will best help me achieve my goal of financial well-being? All right. All getting ready. Many of you are getting ready to take on new jobs. A lot of people get an offer letter and have no idea, don't explicitly calculate how much it's going to cost wherever they're going to go. So many of you have been living in Charlottesville, Virginia, which has a relatively low cost of living compared to other places where or at least where alumni often get work, like Washington, DC. And so if you are looking at jobs in other locations, you really need to look at the cost of living calculator. Okay, you go to, we'll send you these slides. Okay, you go to a cost of living calculator there. You can just type that into Google and it'll take you there, and you type in Charlottesville or wherever you're living, and you type in where you want to live, and you will see, oh, $50,000 in Charlottesville is really like $70,000 in Washington, in Northern Virginia and Washington. So if you get an offer for $50,000 and it's in Washington, DC, that's not going to go very far. And then you can type that in and say, okay, $50,000 in Washington, DC, how much is that worth in Charlottesville? And you'll be like, oh, I need to negotiate more, or I need to do something creative. If that's the job you really want, you have to be creative about it, okay? You also need to go to the IRS withholding calculator and figure out how much money they're going to withhold for taxes, so you can figure out that take-home pay. There's also something called a paycheck calculator. That will also help you figure out what your take-home pay is. All right, so these are all resources to help you gather information, because you want to know what your take-home pay is before you sign a lease, okay, or before you accept an offer. It's, you know, if you're hungry, you can say, pardon me?
I was going to say we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
The question is, do you have any recommendations on budgeting tools?
So aside from that tip, the 20, 30, 50 budget, okay, that's what I recommend, because people are very different. You guys are engineers, so you may be much more line oriented. Some people, you get poets who are like, no, just give me, they can do the 50, 20, 30, 50. They can't do the line by line items. So there are plenty out there. I know lots of people have just built their own on an Excel spreadsheet. Whatever works for you. There is one called Budgeting Wizard that I've looked at. The important thing is just whatever works for you. Okay. Personal finance is personal, and what works well for one person with the best option for one person may not be the best option for another person. The important thing is find something that works for you. And it's part of that decision-making thing is try it, review it. Is it working? If not, adjust, try it again and review. Okay. So, all right. So before you may accept an offer, it's helpful to understand that cost of living calculator. Okay. So that you can negotiate from a position of strength. Okay. Especially, for instance, say you've got two offers, one in one city and one in another city. If you don't look at this and figure out, oh, that they're offering more money in a lower cost of living city, that's a big difference, right? Right now, it's going to be very interesting. This is what's happening. So many people were working from home and they're thinking, well, why am I living in this high cost area if I can work from home? All right. So this is going to be a big thing going. I don't know how it's going to shake out. No one does. All right. Before signing a lease, make sure you know how much you're going to be taking home. Okay. My younger sister is, I consider her my first student. She reminds me of a lot of UVA students. She was awesome, smart, hardworking. She was a mechanical engineer. She got a great job offer out of school, and she was all excited. And she went and looked at she was going to be working in Chicago for a consulting firm, and real estate agent got her and her friend to sign a 13-month lease for a brand new high-rise apartment in downtown Chicago. And I was like, what? And she told me how much the rent was, and I nearly choked. And I said, that's a lot of money. And she said, oh, but it's just my starting salary, which is what the rental agent told her, right? That's, yeah, I said, it's your starting salary for the next 12 months. Like that's what you got to live on. And she got her first paycheck and, didn't have a lot left over. And then she had her rent check. There was not a lot left over. She learned the hard way. But she learned fast, and she quickly, within 13 months, she found a much more affordable apartment. But, she thought she was going to be living the single life in the city. Now, just think about this, because she was going to work for a consulting firm. What do you know about consulting firms?
You might travel a couple of times.
Yeah, you might travel a lot. And what else are you going to do a lot, for sure? Long hours. Long hours. So she had this vision of living in this swanky apartment, entertaining her friends and, enjoying her new apartment. She was never there. So yeah, so she got smart. So remember, try to keep your housing price costs really low. That is, as long as possible when you first come out. It'll just help you a lot. Okay, do not if you can avoid signing a lease, I highly recommend it. Lots of people switch jobs very quickly. If you go to work for some firms will, within a month or two, they might turn around and say, hey, we want to send you to X, Timbuktu or some other city. And if you're not in a lease, you can just, yeah, sure, I'm good with that. If you're in a lease, you're tying yourself up. You want to keep your options open, and be as flexible as possible when you're young, because as you get older, those, you start making choices that limit your flexibility. Okay. So try not to do that when you're young. So think about housing. Which housing should I choose? Identify alternatives. Maybe you can, couch surf. Maybe you can room with friends. Maybe you can avoid signing a lease. Maybe you can rent a room from someone like me. I have a house with empty bedrooms. There are people who would love to have a quiet, responsible person come and, rent their room for a very reasonable amount of money. Okay. So something to think about. Okay. Weigh the evidence, choose the option that's best for you, take action, review the outcomes, and then rinse and repeat as necessary. When I graduated from grad school, I got a job in Old Town Alexandria, and I had a friend who lived in Alexandria. I was not very familiar with the area. I asked him, can I sleep on your sofa for, a couple of weeks while I look around? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I found a wonderful house sharing opportunity with three other professional women, and it was great. Okay, but I would not, it was because into a lease. And then also I got a new job back in Charlottesville 6 months later. I'd never signed a lease, this housing, so I was able to leave very quickly. It didn't cost me much. Okay, I think I paid a couple of months of rent till they found a new roommate, but I didn't have to pay 6 months. So try to be creative and flexible. All right. So big decision, which health insurance to choose. Okay. You're going to use the decision-making model. Okay. Right. And identify the decision. You're going to get the information you need are what's the premium? That's how much you pay every month to get coverage. What's the deductible? That's how much you pay before the insurance kicks in. Co-pays are what you pay. It's usually a negotiated rate for certain things like appointments and prescriptions. What's the co-insurance? That's how much you have to share, your share of the bill if you go to the ER or have surgery or go to the hospital. And this really important number called the MOOP, the maximum out of pocket. So the deductible and the maximum out of pocket are annual numbers. All right. Here's the thing. Most people choose the wrong health insurance at an estimated cost of $1,000 a year. And I'll let you know. So what happens? Most people recognize when they buy car insurance and homeowners insurance or renters insurance that if I buy a policy and with a high deductible, I will pay a lower premium every month. Okay. And if they're responsible people, which most, they say, okay, well, I'm a responsible driver and I've got a safety net and an emergency fund. So they comparison shop and they ask their insurance company or they check online, how much if I double the deductible, instead of taking a $250 deductible, what if it's a $500 deductible? What if it's a $1,000 deductible? And it can really reduce the premium. Strangely, people don't think about their health insurance that way. The other thing is about car insurance or homeowners insurance. You remember, it's for catastrophic problems. Okay, it's to avert catastrophic financial catastrophe. Okay, it's if the house burns down, the house gets flooded, something big. Okay, it isn't if the roof needs repairing, the house needs painting. Think about your car. You don't get car insurance for new tires. You get car insurance for an accident. Okay, not for an oil change. That's all maintenance. Think about health insurance like you think about car insurance. You do maintenance out of budget, and you buy the insurance for the big problems that you hope never happen. Okay. All right. So when you're young and you're coming out, you have options. You can go on your employer's plan. Many of you might have the option to stay on, if you're US citizens and your parents have health insurance, you have the option to stay on your parents' plan until age 26. Okay. You can also go to the healthcare marketplace, healthcare.gov. If you're married, you can go on your spouse's plan. Okay. What you want to look for, just like we talked about with car owners insurance, instead of choosing the high premium, low deductible insurance that many Americans choose, you want to look and evaluate the low premium, high deductible health insurance, because for many people, that is the best option when married or matched with what's called a health savings account. Okay. You have to match it with a health savings account. If you take a high deductible health plan and you don't contribute to a health savings account, that is a bad choice. I discourage anybody from doing that. But I highly encourage people to take a high deductible health plan and make the maximum contribution to their health savings account each year. So this is tip number 3. Health savings accounts, also known as HSAs. They're misunderstood, they're underused, and they're undervalued. It is slowly changing, and it's mostly changing with young people. Because young people start a new job, they read the benefits package, and they're like, oh, I can do that. Older people who are in the same job and they get this package, you're going to get a package every October. It's called open enrollment period. And they'll say, this is when you get to choose your benefits for next year. And lots of people get busy and they're like, I like what I have, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. But remember our decision-making model? That's not good decision-making. Good decision means you identify the decision. What's the best option now? And you gather information. But a lot of people just say, oh, I'm going to keep it. And so many older people are missing out on this. You're going to be a lot better off because you're not. Okay. So an HSA is a tax advantage vehicle for saving, accumulating, and investing funds for current and future medical expenses. All right. Many employers will contribute $1,000 per year to your HSA if you're single, $1,500 if you have family members on the plan. It's free money. It's tax-free. And as soon as they put it in the account, it's yours. If they put it in the account on Monday and you get a new job offer on Friday and leave the following Monday, that money is yours. It stays yours. Okay. The minute it goes in there, it's yours. Okay. All right. Tax-free contributions. The money grows tax-free. And if you take it out for qualified medical deduction, medical expenses, it's tax-free. Okay. So there's a great article by Vanguard called Health Savings Accounts, the Tax Code's Next Sleeper Hit. Young people are catching on to this, and it's a good thing. Okay, I wish some of their parents would talk to me. Some of them do, but some of them are just not there. Okay, remember, contributions are tax deductible even if you don't itemize. Your employer's contributions are excluded from your income. Contributions are 100% vested and remain in your account. Interest, dividends, earnings accumulate tax-free. Distributions to pay for or reimburse qualified medical expenses are never taxed. And you can take it with you. If you leave employers or leave the workforce, it's still your money. All right. Here's a super duper, super valuable tip. Number 4, as adult children carried on your parents' health plan, if you are not their tax dependent, meaning you provide more than 50% of your support, or no one contributes more than 51% of your support, okay? To claim you as a dependent, they have to contribute 51% of your support, okay? So many students don't realize, and their parents don't realize, they are not tax dependents, okay? If you are taking out student loans to pay for your tuition, or you're paying for your tuition with scholarships, that means your parents aren't paying 51%, right? 51% of your support is your room, your board, your tuition, your books, your travel, yada, yada, yada. And if you've got a scholarship, it probably means that they're not contributing 51%, okay? All right, but when you graduate, for sure, you're not gonna be a tax dependent, okay? And the contribution limit while you're covered by a family plan is $7,200 for 2021. It's $3,600 if you're insured as a single individual. So you're covered if your parents have a high deductible plan that's HSA eligible. You can negotiate with your employer and say, thank you for this lovely offer. I'm really interested in working for you. Could you please tell me, would it make any difference to my compensation package if I stayed on my parents' health plan? They have budgeted to pay for your health plan, and it costs on average $5,000 to $6,000 to insure a new grad. Okay, so if you're saying I can save you $5,000 to $6,000 is basically what you're telling them. So hopefully they're going to come back and say yes. We can give you additional compensation if you stay on your parents' plan. And I've had students do that. One student got $3,000 extra in salary. I was so proud of her because that meant her 401k contribution was going to be bigger, her bonus was going to be bigger, and her next year's paycheck was going to be bigger. Pardon me? Hello?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
Please continue.
Question? No question. Okay. Another student told me she got $6,000 extra. I don't know if it was some employers are saying that, if you can get salary, like I said, it affects everything. It compounds. Awesome. Some employers are saying for every year you stay on your parents' plan or some other plan, we'll give you $3,000 extra or $4,000 or whatever it is. Okay. So either one. Okay. But for every year that you are saving them $5,000 to $6,000, they should be sharing that with you. Okay. And what do? You take that money and you put it in the HSA. Okay. And then you don't have to pay taxes on it. You can put up to $7,200 in that HSA because you are covered by a family plan, which has a higher deductible than an individual plan. So how valuable is that tip? Well, this graph shows you if you're between ages 22 and 26, while you can stay on your parents' plan, you put $7,200 in instead of $3,600 in. Somewhere around around age 50, that's going to be worth $250,000. Remember that, how front loading, investing early pays huge dividends at the farther end of the curve. Okay. So as Ben Franklin says, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. So I've gone over, and I still have plenty of things to talk to you about, but I want to pause there and say, if anybody needs to leave and has a question before they do, I am happy to address that. Okay. All right, so personal finance is like life. The more you put in, the more you get out. So if you want more, you can invest more. My favorite book, it's a really easy read. It's called The Only Investment Guide You'll Ever Need. I recommended it to someone today, and I said, for some people, it will be the only investment guide they'll ever read, and it's fine. It covers everything you really need to know, and it's easy to read, it's practical, and it's humorous. Okay, so I highly recommend it. There are also some very important, a variety of websites that are very helpful. You'll notice that most of these say .org. Everybody out there wants your money, okay? There's a lot of stuff out there in social media right now. Be careful, be careful of whose advice you take, consider the source, okay, for where you're getting information. .org is going to be not going to be as biased. They aren't trying to sell you something, okay? Read Barron's. As UVA students, you all have access to a free digital subscription of Barron's online. It's a great investment periodical, and I can't recommend it enough. It'll help you learn and develop your financial knowledge, okay? And very briefly, here's your fiscal plan, your fiscal health plan. You need to be your own advocate. You can't delegate your health care to someone else, right? You can't delegate your financial health care to someone else. You have to be an active participant and your own advocate in this, okay? You can hire, just like you go to the doctor when something, to get a checkup, or when you're not feeling well, or you need extra help, you go to a PT maybe, or, you get a personal coach or trainer. If you want to accomplish something special, you can do that with finance too, but you can do most of the work yourself and hire and get a second opinion when you need it. Okay, you don't need to hire a financial advisor and pay a lot of money. Okay, you need to understand net versus gross. Taxes affect your income and your returns, and what matters is how much you keep, not how much you spend. Okay, you need to develop and implement a budget based on your goals. Okay, you should always strive to spend less than you earn, and you make that a lifestyle habit. You need to insure against calamities with health, renters, and disability insurance. Start with your very first paycheck, okay? Use payroll deduction to contribute to your retirement fund, your employer's retirement fund. Your minimum contribution should be enough to get the maximum employer match. So employer may say, we have a 401k and we match 50% of the employee's contributions up to 6% of salary. So that means if you contribute 6% of your salary, they're going to match 50% of that. That means they're going to contribute 3% of your salary. Okay. If you contribute 10% of your salary, they are only going to contribute 3%. So you need to make sure you get the maximum. So whatever that up to is, that's what you want to invest. Okay. Minimum contribution. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table. Remember, I told you they budget for a certain amount. They budget for the insurance. They budget for you to up to 6%. Okay. The HSA, if they offer an HSA, look at that option. Okay. Remember, if you go off your parents' insurance plan and you go on their HSA, on their health insurance, and take an HSA, you will only be able to put $3,600 in. But they might put $1,000 in. It might be a better deal. Okay. You have to look at the options and what's going to work out better for you. Okay. Make sure you establish an emergency fund, 3 to 12 months of expenses. Create a savings and or a debt repayment, savings/investment and or debt repayment. Keep learning and growing stronger, and make smart choices. Okay. Some people try and make it complicated. Personal finance is not that complicated. Okay. Spend less than you earn and invest the difference, and that's it. Okay. It's, if there's all saying nobody plans to fail, but lots of people fail to plan. And that's what happens to most people. They fail to plan. Does anybody have any questions about credit? Shall we take some time to talk about credit, or do we want, shall we end there?
Anyone? So could you real quickly go over credit? Yeah, I think it would be beneficial since that helps a
Okay,
lot.
so again, we're going to use that wonderful decision-making model. Okay, so identify the decision, like how can I build credit? Lots of people don't know how to do it. So here's the thing: your FICO score think about your FICO score is like your GPA. Okay, your credit history is like your transcript. It shows all the payments you've made and all the debts you owe. Okay, just like your transcript shows everything you've done in college. Your GPA distills it all down to one number. Your FICO score distills your credit history down to one number. And it's comprised of 35% of it is based on your payment history. Are you on time with your payments? That is really easy to do. That's a commitment. Just pay your bills every month on time, all of them. And that will help build up your credit. Okay. The second biggest number is the amount of money that you owe. How much debt do you have? Do you have student loans? Do you have a car loan? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a lot of credit cards with a high amount of credit available? Okay. And are you using a lot of that? Okay. The number 10 is, have you applied for new credit? Okay, are you just starting out? Number 10 is, what is this mix of? Is it fixed? Is it student loans? Is it credit cards? What is it? And number 15 is the length of credit history. How long have you been borrowing money and making payments? So when I was young, and you are young, you don't have a very long credit history because you're young, you just started borrowing. So as you get older, it makes total sense that your score will, as long as you keep paying on time, your credit score will increase. Okay. There's no, it's not a great mystery. It used to be a mystery. Okay. When I was your age, you did not have as much access to this information. You couldn't check your credit score. You couldn't get the number. It was very challenging. The laws have been changed. There's a lot more transparency. You can develop your credit and it will happen. It is, again, not rocket science. It's very easy to do. But there are some do's and don'ts. Okay, very simple. Get your own credit card. Okay. The second part here says, I borrowed this slide from somebody else. It says, become an authorized user on your parents. Don't. Okay. You want to build your own credit. Remember, this is about you becoming self-sufficient and being your own advocate. Being on your parents' plan, parents' card, that is not independence. You want independence. Louis, you have a question?
Sorry. Can you explain the difference between when they say your statement balance and your your last statement balance versus like your current amount?
Yeah. Well, so I'm not sure. I'll kind of fill in a few things. So one thing they'll say, so there's your statement balance, what's due, okay? There's your last statement balance, okay? And then there's, how much did you pay? So if you pay off, which is the recommended thing, to the extent possible, don't charge anything you can't pay for when the bill comes, okay? Because it's a very expensive way to borrow money through credit cards. So your statement balance may say, okay, last month's statement balance was this, then you added this much, these are new charges, and you paid off this much. And if you didn't pay it all off, now there's this much interest. So, and then it'll have your new outstanding balance will be X. There also might be a line that says, this is the statement balance to pay by this date, or this is the minimum balance, okay, that you need to pay. You need to be really careful about that. Companies got in trouble and they're supposed to be very clear about how much you have to pay to wipe out the entire amount. A lot of people, the way they had been showing them was people didn't realize how much they owed. They were just paying the minimum. And that is a recipe for lack of financial well-being. Okay, the opposite of well-being is because credit cards, they charge 36% interest. Remember what we were talking about, opportunity cost? 36%, that's your opportunity cost. It is really hard to get an investment that returns 36%. So paying off your credit cards is one of the best financial decisions you can make. All right. Did that help at all, Louis? Because I don't, unless you have a picture, can you like, want to?
Yeah, no, you answered it. I fell into that trap of paying the minimum for, not like the minimum, but like,
Right.
that was fine. And then I literally looked at my credit card statement like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, wait, I've been getting flipping charge interest for this.
Yeah. They're not, you might do a little sleuthing about that, because they're supposed to make it really clear. They got in trouble for doing that because it's somewhat it's misleading and somewhat fraudulent to consumers. So, but really the biggest recommendation is don't charge things you can't afford to pay off when the bill comes. That's the first one, because that 36% is just outrageous. I'm going to kill your name, Mofajul. Can I come close?
Yeah, yeah, you're perfect. So I have a question regarding that, the credit cards and the credit score. So let's say if I open multiple credit cards, or but I have open multiple credit cards, will it impact negatively my credit score?
I'll let you opened and then you trailed off. Open it, what?
Sorry, yeah, if I open multiple credit cards, and will it negatively impact my credit score?
Yes, if you open multiple cards at once, that's the first don't there. It says don't apply for multiple cards at the same time. Okay, because what they do, they all see that and they say, uh-oh, what's this person doing? Are they going to go on a spending spree? And if they owe money to lots of people at the same time, are they going to be my bill? So so that will definitely hurt your credit score. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that not applying at the same time, let's say after a couple of months, but if I have open credit account, I am not using, let's say I have a 8 credit account, but I'm not using that all of the credit cards, and maybe I am using 2 or 3 credit cards. So will it negatively impact my score?
Well, why do you need it?
Yeah, that's a nice question.
Yeah.
I just want to know that what will be the situation.
The more cards you have, it could hurt your credit rating, because they say, oh, he has access to all this credit. And if something bad happens, if he loses his job, run up bills, and we would be on, and he might not be able to pay us off. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, why do you need more than 2 cards? Okay. Seriously, why do you need more than 2 cards? I have 2 cards. Why do I have 2 cards? Because in case I lose one, okay, or one gets compromised, then at least I have a backup to use until the next one is the first one is replaced.
Okay.
So 2 is a good number.
Cool.
More than 2, you know, maybe you have, like, there are people who have more than 2, and I'll give you a good example. If you have your own business, you might have 2 personal cards and 1 business card, and you put all your business expenses on the business card. But that's a business card. It's not your personal credit card. Okay. So I recommend 2. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Back to, you want to pay off your credit card balance every month. It helps build your credit, and it keeps you know, it's a good opportunity cost. You don't want to leave a balance on your card. Okay. You want to pay your other bills, pay all your bills on time. Okay. Your rent and your utilities and your phone bill, they can all be used to help build your credit. Okay. You can ask that they report those payments to your credit, to the credit agencies, and they can help build the score. Okay. You don't want to close old credit card accounts. Okay, so you open all these accounts and you decide, I don't need all these. I'm going to close some. Well, guess what? That hurts your credit rating. So 2. And don't open, like, so here's the thing. I don't know if you realize that all the big companies out there love you all. Okay, you're young and you don't know much, and you're excited, and you're easy to market to. So I think it's Chase. Yeah, Chase looked at you all as a demographic a few years ago and said, oh, they want credit cards and they love dining out and they love traveling. So they created this wonderful card called the Sapphire card with wonderful perks and reward points, and they charge like $400 a year for it. And they market it very heavily to you, to, you know, and who you're going to be in a few months, like young grads, young professionals. Okay. And here's the thing. So you start it and it's a $300 or $400 a year annual fee. And you're thinking, oh yeah, I can afford that. And then remember the take home pay. And then you realize, why am I paying $300 or $400 a year for this credit card? And like, I'm not doing, you know, what am I doing? And you want to cancel it. And guess what? Now you're kind of stuck. It's going to hurt your credit rating if you kill it. Don't get suckered. Okay. They're looking for suckers. Don't be one. All right. So that's why I recommend no fee credit cards. Discover has student credit cards, no fee. Okay. If you have a hard time, if you can get a credit card. If you have a job of any kind, part-time job, you can, and you're a student, you can get a Discover credit card. I think you can get a Discover credit card for a student, even if you're not employed. Okay. There's no annual fee, and you can start using it to build up your credit. The other reason I like Discover is you can't use, it's hard to use Discover to go down to the corner and drink beer. Okay. And that's where a lot of students spend, you know, rack up their credit card debt. They go down to the corner and spend it on entertainment. If if another option is get a card at Lowe's or Target, it's really hard. You're not going to overspend. You can go buy batteries and light bulbs, but you won't be inclined to go, charge a lot of alcohol or food on either one of those. Okay. Consider alternative credit cards like secured credit cards. That's another option. Discover is probably the best option, but secured is another option. Don't co-sign someone else's credit or loans. Okay. It's not a good thing. And just remember, credit's an asset. Okay. It's your reputation, and you should manage it wisely. Your credits, many employers will check your credit history as part of the background check. Okay. You want a nice, clean credit history. If you have good credit, it returns bills. The theory is, if you're responsible with your credit, you're probably a more responsible car driver as well. So, and you have control of your finances. So that probably means you can afford to pay the deductible as well, right? So credit is an asset, and you should use it that way. Who knows the Jay-Z song, right? There's a line about credit in one of Jay-Z's songs. Does anybody know it? I think it's the song about OJ, something of OJ, the story of OJ. Well, if you're a Jay-Z fan, go look it up. But he says it's a lot more important than going and spending. What's more important than spending money? I'm doing it the clean version. Credit. Okay. So how do you build assets? Identify your decision, gather information, Identify the alternatives. What are my choices? Should I get that Sapphire card for $400 a year? Or should I get the Discover card and a simple no annual fee card, right? That I can keep. All right. What about optimizing your 401k and your health savings account when you get a job, right? How much do you contribute and how do you invest those funds, right? You want to look for low cost, diversified mutual funds. Okay, the good thing is most large employers are going to push you in that direction anyway. Vanguard has the lowest cost funds. Okay. If any of you have taken any econ, a lot of people tell people just invest in the S&P 500 index fund. I say don't. Okay. Why do I say don't? Because everybody's saying just invest in the S&P 500 index fund. It's well diversified, but it became, everybody was doing the same thing to the extent that Vanguard told its employees they wouldn't offer that as an option anymore. Their employees, for their retirement fund, their employees have to have the option of investing in what's called the total stock market index fund. So it's not just the S&P 500 fund, it also has those small cap stocks that we talked about earlier. So I am a fan of the total stock market index fund as well as international stocks. Okay, there's a total stock market index fund and a total international stock market. So Louis, is your hand back up?
Yeah. What's your thoughts on ETFs compared to mutual funds?
ETFs can be they're great tools and they can be very effective for some. They're generally, when it comes to retirement funds, so you can invest in the retirement fund or the ETF. I go for the retirement fund. The costs are almost identical. The performance is almost identical. And the issue for me is that with the mutual fund, you actually own the shares. And with the ETFs, you don't actually own the shares. And there have been ETFs, when the market experiences stress, ETFs don't act like stocks. They act a little differently. So all things being equal, if they're identical, I will go with the mutual fund. But I do own ETFs. Some people, some financial advisors want everybody to be in the ETFs, but I would prefer to have the mutual fund, especially for retirement funds, because you're not trading those. The whole thing about ETFs is you can trade them intraday. You shouldn't have to do that with your retirement funds. You just put the money in and just leave it there for 30 to 40 years. That's the Louis, that is the short version. If you take my class, we can talk about it like a lot longer. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, so how much you contribute? For 2021, the maximum you can contribute to a 401k is $90,500. Okay. Remember, I want you to contribute at least enough to obtain the maximum employer match. It's free money. Many employers match 50%. Some will match 100%. And that is a fantastic deal. Okay. And remember, so think about opportunity cost, right? So what if you haven't gotten your act together yet and you've got some credit card debt and you're paying 36% on that credit while you're trying to pay it off. And you're thinking, should I put the money in my 401k or should I pay off my student loan? How do you decide? Anybody?
It's best to pay it off. And Brenna in the chat said, try to do both.
Yeah. So how do you figure it out? So you want that match, right? The credit card's costing you 36%, right? If you get a 50% match, that means you put I'm just going to use a round number. You put $100 in, your employer is going to put in 50. Okay. You put So it's automatic a 50% return. If they're matching 100%, it's an automatic 100% return. So you want that match because it's going to be more than how much you're spending on paying the 36% interest. Right? Everybody clear on that? It's the opportunity cost. You do not want, you know, there are some financial advisors out there or radio people who talk about, you know, paying off your smallest amount of debt first. And that is a purely, that is based on an emotional concept, not a mathematical or financial concept. The smart financial thing to do is to optimal use of your money. 50% is more than 36%. So you want to get that 50%. Okay. You're going to make more money by putting it in the retirement fund than you are by borrowing from the credit card actually for another month. Okay. Everybody clear on that? Okay. When you reach age 50, you get to put in more. Take advantage of it if you can. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. The HSA contribution limit for 2021 for individuals is $3,600. If you're on a family plan, it's $7,200. Okay. And here's the thing. So if you get married, you and your spouse can only put $7,200 in. If you have 5 children, you can only put $7,200 in. Okay. Or, you know, in that year, whatever. So if it's this year, somebody with a spouse gets to put $7,200 in, somebody with a spouse and 5 kids gets $7,200 in, and has to spread out all those medical bills on 7 people over $7,200. That's why that $7,200 when you're between ages 21 and 26 is so valuable. You will never get that opportunity again. It's a very small window and it's a limited opportunity for only available to people whose parents are on a high deductible plan. If you fall into that category, it is an enormous opportunity. Okay. And I hope you will take it. If you have any questions about it, you can contact me and I can help walk you through it. Okay. It will change your life in a wonderful way. Okay. Many employers will put that first $1,000 in for you. Okay. Understand risk and reward and take that long-term view. Okay. So a lot of the retirement companies and financial services companies, Vanguard, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, Schwab, they have wonderful educational resources. They want informed investors because informed investors make smarter decisions, and that people who make smarter decisions turn out to be less troublesome clients, right? So you want to try to be in this growth and aggressive growth. You want to put a lot of your money in stocks and some of it in foreign stocks, okay? And maybe some in bonds. I will tell you right now, bonds look like a terrible investment, okay? Why? Because interest rates are really low and they are unlikely to go lower, okay? When interest rates are almost at 0, it's very hard to go lower. So they're most likely to go higher in the future. And when interest rates go, bond values go down, right? Bonds and interest rates have an inverse relationship. So bonds don't look like a great investment for a lot of reasons. And the other thing is inflation eats away at bond values significantly. Okay, bonds do terribly with inflation. Okay, all right. So this chart shows you that with an aggressive growth strategy, you have to recognize that you may have 12 months where it hurts. Okay, you may, like last March, I don't know if any of you were paying attention. A lot of people were really upset and freaking out. If you can talk yourself down, if you can stop, take a deep breath and say, it's okay, I'm investing for the long haul, you're going to be great. Okay. because actually when the price drops like that and you're putting money in through your 401k, you are buying more shares, which is great because eventually the price will go back up. Okay. So one of the most famous investors out there, Warren Buffett, says, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So when everybody's freaking out and panicking, that's a time when you say, ooh, do I have any extra money to put to work? Because you can buy at bargain prices. And when everybody's talking about GameStop and how much money they're making, that's a good time to say, maybe I need to just pause and look more before I put any more money to work here. Okay. So any questions about that? All right. So you're going to review your plan and your choices at least yearly. If your life changes, okay, you're going to look at your financial goals, your risk tolerance. What happens if the market goes down 30 to 40%? Am I going to freak out? Try not to. Look at your time horizon, your liquidity needs, your tax consideration. Is the money in a 401k, an HSA, an IRA, or 529? This summer when everybody was trading on Robinhood, I was very worried about people trading on Robinhood because they were trading and when you trade, you buy and sell, that's a taxable event. If you do that within 12 months, you owe taxes at the regular income, at your regular taxable income rate. If you hold a stock or an asset for more than 12 months, it qualifies for long-term capital gains, and the tax rate is 20%. It can be as low as 0, depending on what your regular tax rate is. But you want to invest, you want to choose investments. If you're going to buy volatile stocks like GameStop or something, trade in a taxable account. Okay. Put those kinds of things in your HSA or an IRA, okay, and do that. And that way you can trade and it won't have any taxable. You don't have to worry. You can buy it today and sell it tomorrow and you won't have to pay taxes. You won't be able to spend it as easily, but that's okay too. All right. Think about the legal considerations and any unique circumstances like your family, your health, etc. All right. So most importantly, as Jonathan Swift said, a wise man should have money in his head, but not in his heart. Money's a resource. It allows you to live a life of freedom, to make choices, to be the best person you can be, and achieve and contribute everything you have to the world. So don't let it rule your heart, but use it as a resource, and stay in touch. I'd love to hear how you're all doing with some of this. Louis, you have another question?
Yeah, so I came in a little late, I think. When we graduate this year, you recommend opening a 401k, an HSA, and a IRA. All
If
three.
if you can swing it, okay. If you can swing that, and now remember, not everybody's. You can only contribute to an HSA if you have an HSA eligible high deductible health insurance plan. Okay. Many employers offer them. So one of the big choices you're going to have to talk to your parents and find out what kind of health plan they have. And then you're going to have to look at your employer's health plan and say, which one's going to be a better choice for me? Can I negotiate? If my parents are on a high deductible health plan, can I negotiate more money from my employer to stay on that plan and then fund an HSA with $7,200 instead of $3,600? Okay. You may or may not be able to do that. I definitely highly recommend fully contributing. If you have a good paying job and can put $19,500 into your 401k, do it. okay? For this year, so you all are STEM grads. Some of you have really good, excellent offers. I'm proud of you and happy for you. Congratulations. Roth IRAs are not eligible. Not everyone can contribute to a Roth IRA. There are income limitations. This year, because you only will have worked about 6%, 50% of the time, most of you contribute to a Roth IRA. And so that will be a good option. Also, some of the 401ks offer a Roth option. So the Roth option is probably a really good option for you for 2021. And remember when I said open enrollment happens in October and they'll say, make your choices for next year? Well, next year you may be in a much higher tax bracket because your salary will be twice as much, right? So what I tell students, when you're in the low tax bracket, you want to contribute to Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks. And when you're in the higher tax brackets, you might want to think about contributing to a regular IRA or traditional Roth, traditional 401k. The difference is with a Roth, you put the money in, you pay taxes, and then you put the money in. If you leave it there for at least 5 years and you take it out after age 59 and a half, there are no taxes, no federal taxes due, okay? With a traditional IRA or a traditional Roth 401k, you put the money in pre-tax, means it doesn't show, you're not paying taxes this year on it. It reduces your current income tax liability. It grows tax-free, just like the Roth. But when you take the money out, when you're 59 and a half or older, you're going to pay tax on every dollar you take out. So what you're trying to do, one of the things in your plan is you're trying to develop tax diversification. You're trying to sort of smooth out your tax bill now and in the future. Tax rates are at a low right now, historic low, and comparatively to other economically developed countries. So tax rate, and that's one thing, but also we have huge deficits. So they're not sustainable low. Okay, if we were paying our bills, they'd say, oh, that's great, don't worry about it. We're not paying our bills, we have to pay our bills. So tax rates are likely to go up in the future. So that's why lots of people, including very wealthy people, are taking this time period right now to move money into Roth IRAs and Roth plans, because tax rates are likely to go up a lot in the future. So the number I shoot for is 25%. If my tax rate's below 25%, I put it in the Roth. If it's over 25%, probably put it in the traditional, because I'm thinking my tax rate in retirement, I'm hoping I come in at that 25% again. But it's, we don't know, and it is entirely possible that they will change the tax. So that's why you need to diversify and have money in taxable accounts, have it, the HSA. That HSA becomes an incredible tool, because you can take money out at any time to pay or reimburse yourself for medical expenses, even old medical expenses. So I keep my medical expenses by year, and if I need money, I just go out, I pull out the receipts and say, okay, I'm going to withdraw to reimburse myself for the expenses for 2017 now. Okay, so that's another, and it's tax-free, even though you paid the bill several years ago. So it's a tool, it's an emergency fund, it's a wealth accumulation tool, it's a tax savings vehicle. And the HSA is not subject to those income tax limitations that the Roth is. So it's really advantageous. That's a mouthful. I just told you a lot of information. I hope you got some of it. I'm sorry,
I was that was really helpful. With the HSA, is there any really when you define medical expenses, is it pretty strict or is it pretty open? And when can you start taking it out? Or is it?
Or you can take it out right away. Most employers will talk to you, oh yeah, you can do this HSA and you can reimburse yourself. And they say, oh, and they give you a debit card and they say, you can just pay for all your bills with the debit card. The debit card will just take the money out of the HSA. And that is entirely true. But I tell people, yes, you can use it as a reimbursement account, but that's not the optimal use. Okay, if you have money sitting in your checking account earning or savings account earning 0 interest, and you can have money in your HSA growing tax-free invested in equities, that's what I did. So I've just paid my medical bills and saved the receipts. And so I can pull them out whenever I want. I think that was your first question. When can you do it? You can do it right away with your debit card, or I was like, no, I want that money to grow tax-free. I'll pull it out later. Okay, do you follow?
No, yeah, that makes sense. I
Okay.
didn't realize that it's like an investment tool that you just use to pay off medical bills. I was confused at first, but that makes sense.
That's in my opinion, that's the optimal use of those accounts. It's not how most people understand them. It's not how most employers explain them. They explain them as a reimbursement account. And that is only less than half of the picture.
So when would you never mind.
No, you're thinking ahead. That's great. So here's the thing. So that money, I can pull it out anytime I want. Okay. But say you get to 65, you can use it to pay for Medicare, your Medicare premiums in your old age. And right now, I'm not sure if I believe these numbers, but these are the numbers that some firms are coming out with. They're saying a 65-year-old couple needs about $250,000 or will spend about $250,000 on medical expenses and Medicare during their retirement. Okay, so you can use an HSA to pay those bills tax-free. So having $250,000 in your HSA when you're 65, or for right now, a 65-year-old who had $250,000 and would be in great shape, it would like take away one whole bill for medical expenses, and that is a large expense in retirement. The other thing is when you get to 65, you can take money out of your HSA for non-medical expenses. Say you go through all of your receipts, you've taken it all out, X-ray. You have nothing left, but you still have lots of money in there. You did really well investment wise, and you want to take some money and you want to go on a trip. You can take the money out and use it and just claim it as regular income, as if it was an IRA, and just pay regular income tax. So it's got enormous flexibility, unlike any of the other options out there. So I'm just keep trying to educate people and say, okay, look at this and plan and try and think about the opportunities. Back to what kind of medical expenses? They're the traditional medical expenses. They're, x-rays, prescriptions, eyeglasses, dentist, eye vision, surgery, ER, PT, all the regular things. The things that don't count are optional things like hair transplants, teeth whitening, cosmetic surgery, veterinary bills. Those things don't count, but sort of the traditional medical things are all good.
So you just turn your receipts in for that when you get?
You have to, for the most part, you just have to hold your receipts in case you're audited.
Got it.
Real quick, sorry, due to time, we'll have to move on if anyone else has questions. If not, Professor Kelly will drop her email in the chat and
yeah, and I'm happy to stay. I don't know if it'll cut out, but I'm happy to stay and chat some more if anyone wants to stay and chat. Otherwise, I want to say thank you to all of you for paying attention, for coming and joining me, and I hope I get to meet some of you in person sometime soon. Please let me know if you have any questions, or in the future, drop me a line and tell me, woohoo, my HSA is really big. I read an article once about somebody saying they were going to pay for their, they were going to use their HSA to pay for their, all the costs of their first child was about to be born, and the HSA was going to cover all of the expenses. And so that's a joyous thing. So hopefully that'll be you someday.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, Professor Kelly. Let's give